Sorry, I'm giving a class now. We'll speak tomorrow. Bye-bye. All right. Okay. Welcome everybody to the Parsha class, Parsha Shoftim 5782. I'll be your host. The Parsha Shoftim is one of the 3 or 4 parshiot in the Torah at the end of Devarim that really summarizes a lot of the laws, a lot of the mitzvot that have to do with living a Jewish life, not just in terms of personally, but also in terms of socially. There's a lot of social laws here. I mean, Shoftim deals with the courts and idolatry and the Sanhedrin, the laws of kings, things that the laws of the Levium and how they don't inherit the land and how they have to live off of the gifts that we give them, the rights that the Kohanim and the Levium have, personal laws, like we said before, about sorcery and staying away from that sort of thing. We'll be hopefully deep diving into that shortly. And then laws of dealing with prophecy, and then courts again with witnesses, and then preparation for war and how war is fought. And then that leads into next week's parsha, which deals with some of the consequences of war, which are never good in general. And so that's your parsha in a nutshell. And now, in the time we have remaining, we can go do a deep dive. But this is a good time to remind everybody that this class has been sponsored anonymously. And I wanted to thank the anonymous sponsor and give a bracha that everything should be good for this person, good health and good news, and it should only see success in all endeavors. And this should be a merit for this person and for all of us who are learning Torah together, that we should continue learning Torah and benefiting from the wisdom of Hashem. So that's that. These are our sources for the day. This is the source sheet that I sent out in the email. And I have to get all the way to the top here. Okay, so we're going to start with, again, with the deep dive. We can't do every single verse, but we're going to try to understand several verses very well. That's really the best we could do, I think, in an hour's time that we have. If we had more time, we could spend all day learning the parsha, really. But just Rav Hirsch's commentary, as you'll see, can take a whole day just to read. So chapter 17, verse 14 in the book of Devarim and Deuteronomy, it says, Ki tavo el ha'aretz, when you go into the land, asher Hashem elkecha noten lach, that Hashem will give you, Virishta, Vishavta ba, when you take possession of it and when you settle in it. Amarta asima alai melech b'chol hagoyim asher sevivotai. You will say, I'm going to put a king over myself, like all the other countries around me. So this is the introductory verse to the laws of kings. And what's interesting is that every country needs a king or a government of some sort. Anarchy never works, ever. As long as if you want a successful society, you're going to need a bureaucracy. You're going to need some sort of government. You're going to need some law and order. You can't defund the police too much, That's a political statement. No, I'm not going to get into those. But anyway, but that's kind of how that happens. You can't have lawlessness. You need some sort of order. If you need fairness, you need all kinds. You need rules, and all of that needs to be controlled by at least some central party, right? Even in America, where there's there's a lot of talk about states' rights, federal rights. What's better, what's more important, where should the emphasis be? Even the parties in the government that don't really feel like there should be very much strength in the federal government, they still agree that there should be a federal government, right? No, nobody says that only the states should all just have their own independent governments, because then it would not be a United States. Then it would just be states. States of America, not the United States. The only thing that really unites us is the federal government. Really, if you think about it, right? And they mint the money, and they just even these small details are all taken care of by the national government. Now, Rav Hirsch is going to ask another question. Now, do we need a king? Do we need a king? Why do we need a king? And he's going to propose several options. This is a very, very long, beautiful essay. And in fact, I have the whole thing for you to read if you'd like. We're going to skip around a little bit here, but I strongly recommend, if you get a chance, to look through it in detail. Like I said, it is lengthy. It's 4 or 5 pages in the book, so it's a real piece, and it's worth it though. And like I said, I have the whole thing here for you for your reading pleasure. In your whenever you have the opportunity. So, but let's start with, what is a king for? And in this verse, in these words that we read already, there are a lot of hints to what a king really should be doing that you wouldn't think about ordinarily. And part of this has a lot to do with why the Jewish people were wrong in asking for a king when they did. When in the time of Shaul, when they asked for a king, the rabbis learn, and really the verses seem to indicate that they did this incorrectly. For somehow they did something wrong when they requested a king. So Rav Hirsch deals with that, as we're about to see. We're going to skip to a few paragraphs here, when it says, when you come to the land that God your God is giving you, and take possession of it and settle in it. That's the verse we just had. These words, which introduce the section of the king, on the king, state unequivocally at the very outset that it is not the role of the king of Israel to conquer the land and secure Israel's possession of it. How do these words indicate that? He's saying these words indicate that the king's job is not to conquer the land. Now, that's what most people think when they think of a king, especially in Rav Hirsch's time, 150 years ago, when there were actual kings with actual power. So back then, a monarchy meant we're going to have a monarchy so that we have a king who's going to be strong, he's going to defend us, and whenever he wants to, he'll grab more land from other countries. That was kind of the idea of monarchy. That's not the Jewish idea. How do you know? Because it's in these words. For it is God who gives the land of Israel. Look at the verse. When you come to the land that God your God is giving you, not that the king is giving you, God is giving you, and take possession of it and settle in it. Then you're going to ask for it. In other words, the land is conquered, the land is given to you by God, the land is possessed, the land is settled, and only then you can ask for a king. It's all set. So that's not what the king is for, obviously. The king is not to settle the land. The king is not to possess the land. The king is not to give the land. That's not the king's job, because God did that already, right? So he continues, for it is God who gives the land of Israel, and with God's help, Israel will conquer the land and dwell safely in it under his protection. God's help, protection, and blessing are promised to Israel again and again in the Torah, and are also stressed repeatedly by Moshe in his admonitions preparing Israel for the conquest of the land. For these purposes, Israel does not need a king. All that Israel needs to do, so that God's promise may be fulfilled, is to be Israel, to prove that it is indeed the people loyal to God's Torah, to win a moral victory over itself from within, so as to be sure of victory also against all enemies from without. So this is an important, critical point. We are strong not when we build up our muscles. We are strong not when we get a really good king, really, really popular, dashing, charismatic fellow up there being the king. That's not what makes us strong. What makes us strong is for us to be moral. When we do the right thing, Hashem protects us and we become strong. That's what gives us that strength. Sorry. So let's skip a little bit, as I promised I would. Like I said, we don't have time for the entire essay. So, but he says that the last part of the verse says that we're going to ask for a king like all of the nations around us, which is the phrase "Kechol hagoyim asher sivivotai," all of the nations that are around me. So he says there is no doubt that the addition "Kechol hagoyim asher sivivotai," all the nations that are around me, can be interpreted only as follows: all the nations seek to unify all their national resources for the greater good of their own nation, as we were saying before, which in their view consists in the development of the greatest possible power vis-a-vis a world outside. To this end, they must subordinate themselves to one head of a state at whose command all the nation's resources must be placed for this purpose. You too, Israel, will feel the need for national unity in order to obtain the greatest possible good for yourself. But you deem this good to lie solely in the most complete fulfillment of God's Torah in your midst, in your own midst. You want the greatest national good? Again, behave that way and you'll get that. It's not about putting together your resources and inventing new things and having the best tax strategy or whatever. That's not what makes us a strong nation. For this purpose too, you will seek to establish national unity by means of subordination to one head of state. Right. So that's what a king is for. You are to place your resources at his command that he may fight for and defend your national mission eternally. Internally. Indeed, this is the true vocation of the king of Israel, for with the decentralization of the nation was faced with a threat, right? Remember, the nation was all together, it was all sort of centralized when it was in the desert, right? There was a Mishkan and there were camps, et cetera, et cetera. So there was a central government. Now that they're moving into Israel, this is why we need to have these laws now, because they're going to move into Israel. They're going to be spreading out. There's the potential of them breaking up and making their own countries, which, by the way, eventually happened, right? With the 10 tribes, the 10 northern tribes splitting up from the 2 southern tribes of the south. So all of this is part of history, and all of this is part of how most nations are formed. But we can't be decentralized. We need a moral center, and that's what the king is for. The king is supposed to uphold the moral center of the Jewish people in a way that they're able to survive and stay strong. Right. So this whole idea of being protected against external enemies, we cannot ignore what our responsibilities are inside. So that's what that's what this whole parsha of the king has to do with, the morality and the law that the parsha starts off with by talking about the Shoftim and the judges, etc. So that's how the parsha begins. And like I said, it's a very, very beautiful essay. I'm sorry we don't have more time to deal with it. It probably deserves a class on its own. All right, we're going to skip to chapter 18, verse 13. Very important short verse, probably worth a lot of attention. And we're going to see that there is a difference of opinion about how to understand it. And this actually leads to an important halachic difference. And we'll see all of this in just a moment, with a contradiction, or not a contradiction, but a conflict between the Rambam, that's Maimonides, sorry, English is not my first language, and Ramban Nachmanides. So the very simple verse, Tamim tiyeh im Hashem Elokecha. Be tamim, be pure, be wholehearted with Hashem your God. Sorry? Okay, no problem. So be wholehearted, be complete, be pure with Hashem your God. So how this is usually understood, this is in the context of, it's important to bring context. So if you look in the Torah itself, you'll see that this verse is in the context of such things as soothsayers, right? We're not supposed to go to soothsayers, to witches, to fortune tellers, to those sorts of things. We can go to, we've been given prophets, and these prophets are true because they tell us to do what Hashem said. They don't contradict what Hashem said, etc. All of that is the context. So why shouldn't you be going to soothsayers? What's wrong with going to, let's say, I want to know what to do. I want to know what the lottery numbers are. What's wrong with going to like some witch who's going to like break up, tea leaves or something into a cup and read them and tell me what the lottery numbers are? What's wrong with that? Is there anything wrong with winning $148 million? Maybe. All right. Anyway, so the Gemara in Yevamot tells us an interesting incident. The Gemara in Yevamot 21b. This was in the Daf Yomi quite a while ago now, a couple of months ago. What is going on here today? Okay. Amar Rav Chisda. Ha milta migavri Rabba Shmiali. I heard this from a great person. Umanu Rabbi Ami. Who was he? He was Rabbi Ami. Lo asru kala elam mipnei kala. Okay, so that's not the part I wanted to get to. Anyway, so you said that a daughter-in-law is there's a rule about a daughter-in-law. It's not really relevant to us right now. Okay. Amru li kaldai, and so an explanation of what this means. A Chaldean, which back then meant like he was into magic and astrology and stuff like that. So this Chaldean said to him, Malfana havet. He said to him, you will be a teacher. Okay. Amena ki garva rabba havena. So I said to myself, if he means I'm going to be a great man, so maybe I will. Maybe I'll have great knowledge. Asbara midate I mikre dardake havena. Ashiale mirabanan datu deve kinishta. And if it means that I'm going to be a rabbi, a teacher in a Beit Knesset, in other words, in a synagogue, hashasvarta midate. So then I understand. Then I can understand things on my own. So, in other words, he heard something from. Let's just tell the story over in normal English for a moment. Right? So he's walking, minding his own business, not concerned about anything else. And all of a sudden, this Chaldean comes up to him and it tells him his future. He says, "You are going to be a great man." So he started thinking about, what does it mean I'm going to be a great man? So what that means, by the way, in the Gemara, it seems like here he is, here's this rabbi, and he's taking the words of this soothsayer, astrologer, prophet, whatever you want to call it. He's taking these words kind of seriously. He's thinking about it. Like, what did it mean? If it doesn't mean anything, let's put it this way. We're going to see the Rambam right now in Mishnah Torah, Hilchot Avodah Zarah, chapter 11, halacha 16, says that these words that the soothsayers say are worthless. They're not saying anything. It's all garbage. They're just liars and thieves and crooks, and they're manipulative at best. They have no power. They don't know what's actually going to happen. Let's just look at these words very clearly in the Rambam. He doesn't mince any words here. Okay, he says, Udvarim ha'elu, and these words, kulan, their words are divrei sheker. These are words of falsehood. V'chazav hein, v'hem shehitu behem of the kochavim, v'kadmonim gegoya artzot kedei sheyagu acharehen. You shouldn't follow after them. They don't know what they're talking about. They've misled all of the Gentile nations around the world. This is, of course, the Rambam writing about 1,000 years ago. He's talking about, all kinds of the different groups and sects and stuff that were running around with the nomads in the Bedouins in the Middle East then, right? And all kinds of other superstitions and stuff that were probably creeping up even in Europe already by then. The end really Israel. These are not fitting for the Jews. Shehem Chachamim, we're wise. We're not supposed to do that. We're not supposed to listen to this garbage. Kamim lehi mashech havalim elu, to listen to all of this worthlessness. V'lo halos al leiv sheyesh toeles behem, and it shouldn't enter your heart at all. And then he brings some verses, including our verse. He says, these nations that are around you, they listen to these things, and then of course our verse ends with the words, our verse here, which is the Tamim Tiyeh im Hashem Elokecha. So what's the Rambam's view? The Rambam's view very clearly is that this is all garbage. It's meaningless. You don't have to listen to it. Not important. So what's the rabbi in the Gemara doing in Yevamot? Listening to this Chaldean. What's going on? So are we allowed to listen to these soothsayers or not? Seems like we're not, but then the rabbi in the Talmud is. So that brings up the Ramban. Nachmanides on our verse here tells us a completely different way to read this verse. And this is actually, as we'll see shortly, is the final halacha. The meaning, the reason for this idea of being wholehearted with Hashem, we have to believe that Hashem runs the show. We have to believe that Hashem knows what he's doing, and Hashem has a future planned for everybody and everything and every blade of grass. We have to believe that. So if there's a soothsayer who says otherwise, we don't believe it. But beyond that, since we know Hashem has a plan, and we know Hashem isn't making any mistakes, why would we go to somebody to find out what to do? Hashem knows what we're going to do. It's already planned. It's already taken care of. We have nothing to worry about. Why worry? If Hashem wants you to win the lottery, you'll find out the lottery numbers, or you'll get the random ticket, and it'll have the winning lottery numbers. Right? Whatever it is, it's not. You don't have to go to any kind of palm reader, sorcerer, crystal ball, or anything else. All of that, whether it's garbage or not. See, he doesn't say. It's interesting. The Rambam said it was all sheker, it was all lies. The Ramban is not saying that. He's saying even if it's not, even if it's real, even if these people have some sort of power, even if Miss Cleo there and her, I don't remember her number anymore, but it was on the TV every day. So even Miss Cleo, right, who might know something, it doesn't matter. You don't go to her, because being pure, being wholehearted with Hashem means trusting him. He knows what he's doing. Leave it up to him to take care of it. Obviously, that doesn't mean, by the way, very important, that doesn't mean that we shouldn't do our own effort, right? It doesn't mean, oh, Hashem is going to let me win the lottery so I can quit my job now. That's not how that works, right? It's not, I don't know the way, so God take the wheel, you drive my car for me, I'll close my eyes. That's not going to work, right? That's a bad idea. I don't think that's ever worked. And it doesn't mean you don't ask advice from great people if you need advice about what to do. Two equally good decisions are in front of you, buy this house or buy that house, and you can choose what to do, and both are good. So you might need advice from somebody. There's nothing wrong with asking advice. You don't have to flip a coin or something. That's not the correct attitude either. So as I said, this idea of trusting Hashem, this is brought down in halacha. Let me show you where. So that's the Ramban, and again, you can look at it in greater detail in your free time. So the Shulchan Aruch, Yoredea Kuf Ayin Tet. So that's in the Shulchan Aruch. That's the book of Jewish law written by Rav Yosef Karo. Yoredea, that's the section usually on more, I guess what we would call it, ritual things. Section 179. Kuf Ayin Tet is 179, and the first halacha there is shelo lekashef leonan unechashech. So sorry, that's not the first section. That's just an explanation of what it's going to be. Not to do magic, not to inquire of the dead, that sort of thing. And then here it says, Ein shoalim mechozin kochavim v'lo begoralot. We don't do magic. We don't do astrology. We don't do any kind of divining actions, divination. Okay. We don't try to figure out what's going to be. Then comes the Haggah, which is the Ramah, Reb Moshe Isserlis's Ashkenazi commentary to the or additions to the Shulchan Aruch. He says, why? Why is it that we don't do these things? Is it because it's false? So he could have gone with that. He could have said, because it's false, it's all sheker. So don't go to astrologers. Don't go to soothsayers, because it's all garbage, like the Rambam said. That's not what he says, though. Look what he says. It says, Mishum Shenamar, because it says, Tamim tiyeh im Hashem elokecha. Be pure in front of Hashem. In other words, the Ramban's commentary, that the whole idea of not going to these soothsayers isn't because they're false. We're not going to these soothsayers because we're supposed to be trusting Hashem. We're supposed to be tamim. We're supposed to be pure-hearted when it comes to Hashem. And that's really the whole essence of the whole thing. Obviously, we don't go to any of those kinds of people for the reasons that we said. Besides the fact that, like the Rambam said, they're probably all false anyway. Even if they did have some sort of power, even if David Copperfield is able to make the Statue of Liberty disappear, that doesn't mean he's going to be able to make your debt disappear or somebody you don't like or something, right? So we could try, but no, you can't try. That's the whole point. You shouldn't try. It's not because they're powerful or not powerful. It's because we're supposed to trust in Hashem that He'll do the best that we need. Okay. Next piece. The next few commentaries, the next few verses that we're going to learn have to do with war. Ooh, what is it good for? All right. So we're going to go to chapter 20, verses 1 through 3. We're going to three verses all in a row here, because they all kind of relate to each other, as you'll see. Ki tetzeh milchama, when you go to war, al oivecha, against your enemies, v'ra'ita, and you see sus v'rechev, amrav, you see the horse and its rider. And by the way, horses were animals of war back then. It wasn't no little girl fantasized about having a pony farm back then. Horses were seen as scary. They were used as war horses, as they were vehicles of war. They were somehow armed. They had all kinds of spiky armor on them and stuff like that. It was scary. So you see this. You see Amrav. You see a great nation in front of you. A lot of people. Mimcha lo tira. Don't be afraid. Mehem, from them. Why? Ki Hashem elkecha imach. Hashem is with you. Hamalcha me'eretz Mitzrayim. And it's not just any God who's with you. It's the God, the same one who rescued you from Egypt. So he has a track record, proven track record. He's been good. He rescued you from the greatest nation of the world at the time, biggest empire, the Egyptian empire. He took you out. You have nothing to worry about. You go to war with any nation. They're, pipsqueaks compared to the Egyptians. All right, what did what was it that Obama called ISIS when they first talked about it? The minor league, right? Something like that, right? Right. So yeah, the Egyptians were major league. Any other nation now is going to be minor league. And anyway, we're talking about Hashem. He can take care of anybody. Not a problem. V'haya b'karavchem el hamilchama v'nigesh hakohen nedeber el ha'am. So when you get close to actual war, the Kohen, there's a special job that a Kohen has, not the Kohen Gadol, but a special Kohen that's dedicated to war. He goes with the regiment, and he's supposed to speak to the nation, and those to the soldiers. V'amar lehem, and he says to them, he says a few things, but it starts with this. It says, Shema Yisrael. It says, Shema Yisrael, Atem krevim hayom lamilchama. You're coming now close to war. Al oivechem, al against your enemies. Al yerech livavchem. Don't lose your heart. Al tirau, don't be afraid. V'al techbezu, and don't be scared. V'al ta'artzu mipnehem, and don't shake in front. Don't what do you call it? Tremble in front of them. In other words, he gives them let's count them, 4 different languages for don't be afraid. Right? So on this commentary, on this verse that I think needs some sort of explanation, we're going to look at the father of all explainers. That's Rashi himself. And Rashi is going to tell us what it means by having 4 different languages telling us not to be afraid. He says, Alba azharos keneged arba devarim shemalchi ha'umot osim. These 4 languages are, I wouldn't say, they parallel the 4 actions that the nations would do when they went to war. What are these? Ma gifin bitrisehem kedei lakishan zelazeh kedei lashmiya kol shechbezu elu kenegdam v'yanusu. They would, these nations, they would clash their shields together, make a lot of noise, right? So don't be afraid of that, right? They would also have Shatan Parsot Susehem. They would have their horses neighing, right? I told you these horses were scary animals then. So the clashing of these shields, and you have the neighing of the horses. We have tzevichim bekolam. They'd yell with their voices. There's what's called in military parlance, I think they call it the rebel yell. Yeah, so like to really shout and scare your opponent with your voice. V'tokim b'shofrot. They'll blow horns. Mine shmiim kol. Either way, all these things they would do to scare their enemy, and these 4 things that they would do are paralleled by these 4 things that we're not supposed to be scared of. Don't be scared of the voices. Don't be scared of the shields. Don't be scared of the horses, and don't be scared of the music of the shofars or whatever else. Don't be scared of any of that. Hashem will take care of everything. Interesting, though. What do you notice about all of these 4 methods of scaring people? What do these 4 methods all have in common? Again, screaming, the horses making noise, clanging the shofars, blowing the shofar, clanging the shields. Don't clang shofars. It's not good for the shofar. It might crack. All right. So what all these 4 things have in common is it's all noise. Says Rav Eliyahu Dessler in Michtav Mi'Eliyahu, Volume 3. He has an essay there about the war of the Yates. In other words, we all have inside of us a Yetzer, an inclination. We call it the Yetzer Hara, the evil inclination. It's not always bad. It can be used for good. That's not the point of this class right now, but that's an important thing. So he says here, he quotes our verses. Oh, that's not what I meant to do at all. He quotes our verses, and then he says, "Psukim elu dorshot b'Gemara." The Gemara in Sota 42 says, "Arba asharot shenitzkar hakoin." So he basically that's the source of where Rashi gets his commentary about these 4 noises and what they parallel to. And then he says, "V'amar hagon hatzadik Rav Yerucham." He's talking about Rav Yerucham Levovitz, the famous mashgiach of the Mir Yeshiva. It says Mimir from Mir. Okay, just in case I was wrong about that. Shaparsha zu megalelanu haTorah echad midarche asaitit hayetzer. So the Gemara, the Torah here, is giving us an indication about one of the ways that the Yetzer Hara deals with us. One of the ways that we can deal back with it. All the people who went to war were righteous people. Keep that in mind, right? But remember, we're going to see later on that all of the soldiers who were afraid that they weren't worthy of fighting the war, that they were allowed to leave. So the only people left on the battlefield were soldiers who felt that they were righteous enough. They weren't afraid of any sins or anything, or Hashem wouldn't protect them. Right? They all trusted in Hashem. Why does the Torah have to warn them not to be afraid? They're already trusting Hashem. These are the big tzaddikim. These are very righteous people. Why do they need that? Because of the noise of the horses? Because they're going to hear noises? But that's the thing. Even a tzaddik can be broken down a little bit. Every one of us have to remember that all this is just noise. As to paraphrase Shakespeare, it's sound and fury indicating nothing. Right? It's all it is just noise. What can they fight us with? They've got nothing. We have Hashem on our side. Hashem is our shield. They're clinging to their shields. We have a better shield. Right? We have a force field. We have better than the Iron Dome. We have Hashem. Right? We have nothing to be afraid of. And all of this noise that they're doing is all an effort to confuse us, and we shouldn't fall for that trick. Okay, let's skip to the next verse as promised. As I said before, the officers, the Kohen, would warn the people that they could leave under certain conditions. Sorry. No, sorry. Shotrim al el ha'am. They spoke to the people, to the soldiers, saying, "Mi ha'ish asher bana bayit hadash." Who is the person who built a new house, v'lo hanacho, and didn't settle in it? Yelech v'yashuv lebeito. You can go back to your house, pen yamud v'milchama, because otherwise you might die in this war. V'ish acher yachnechenu. Another person might come and settle in your house that you built. So the Vilna Gaon, quoted here in Untitled Orot, asks an interesting question. Yesh lahavin. We can ask this question. Parsha zu al hachozrim orachei hamilchama. This parsha regarding these people who go back to war. Harei lechora elu shenigzar alehem lamut lo yintalu af im yeshuvu lebeitam. If Hashem, this is a good philosophical question. If Hashem destined for this person to die, what difference does it make if he goes home or not? He's going to die at home. Right? If he's supposed to die, he's going to die. So what difference does it make if he's going to go home or if he's going to stay in the war? What's going on? V'kein kasher ketzav negu kol otam tzadikim shevachu b'shat hazam u'madua lo samchu al keich Shemea Hashanizkar alav lamut yemut b'chol makom u'mi shenigzar alav shihyeh yinatzel. Also, what is the whole point of even nowadays in the times of the Vilna Gaon, there are pogroms and such going on? Same question. How do we understand why people leave or run away from the pogrom? If there's a pogrom and you're supposed to die, so take it like a man, and die. You're supposed to. Hashem said so, right? Why are we allowed to save our lives? So now he's going to explain very important philosophical idea. And this is, I don't want to say a common question, but it's in opportunities to quote unquote stump the rabbi. People always bring up questions like, where was God during the Holocaust? Well, that sort of thing. Part of the answer is going to have to do, at least part of an answer. Saying the answer, there's multiple answers to that question, but part of the beginnings of an answer might be from this concept of the Vilna Gaon. It says here, Elish yesh mazal klali, yesh mazal prati. A mazal, a fate, let's call it, for lack of a better word, a destiny. There are two kinds, and they both operate. Each person has both of them operating on them. One mazal is klali, is a general mazal. In other words, a community is destined to have an attack, right? A community is destined to be attacked, right? So a person living in that community has to deal with that. But then there's also yesh mazal prati. There's also an individual destiny, an individual mazal, an individual fate. Okay? And you have to deal with that too. Im nigzar ir achat or uma achat mazal klali lihayiharog. If Hashem destined for a particular city or a particular nation that they should be killed, that's a general rule for that, a general fate for that place. God forbid, we shouldn't know of such things. Lo yinatzel me'onesh zeh af oto ha'ish shelo nigzar alav b'mazal prati. The only person who can escape that is somebody who somehow earned a different personal destiny, an individual destiny that's different. Kamo kein ish nesafe below mishpat. He quotes a verse in Mishlei that sometimes innocent people are swept away together with the guilty when the guilty are punished. Ki mazal klali gover al mazal prati. Sometimes this general rule, this general destiny, can even overcome and compromise this individual destiny. Al kach mo'ilu habechira b'makom hasakana. And that's how your free choice can sometimes be affected in a time of danger. Right? You're in war. It's a time of danger. So your personal destiny, even if your personal destiny was to live, if you're putting yourself in a dangerous place, that's not your destiny anymore, my friend. You've changed your destiny from your individual destiny of being safe, and you've put yourself in a place where the general rule is that it's going to be dangerous. That makes sense? All right? Shema lo nigzar Allah ba'ofen prati, va'az yachol l'hanatzel b'brichato. So what can happen now is that this individual is given the opportunity to escape war and go back to his home, where if his individual destiny was to live, now he's taking his individual destiny out of the general destiny that's in the battlefield of being in danger, and he's putting it into somewhere safe, and he can now survive. That's an important idea, and it helps explain, or at least begins to help explain, how some people live and some people die, and sometimes the good dies together with the evil, and that sort of thing. We don't have a lot of time, but we're going to see what we can do with this. Let's see if we can do this first. Awkward. Okay. Okay. Oh boy, oh boy, oh boy. Okay. We have a few more verses I wanted to get into. Let's see what we can accomplish today. Okay. Still in the chapter of war. It says, Ki tatsur el ir yamim rabim. If you've besieged the city for many days, yilachem aleha tafsa. Lo tashchit at Eitza. If you've it's time to capture this city, right, that you've been besieging. Do not destroy its trees. Lindoach alav garzen kimena tochav oto lo tichrot ki adam Eitza sada levo mipanecha b'matzur. That concept is, by the way, adam Eitza sada is used in a lot of different contexts as well. It means that a man is comparable in some way to a tree in the field, right? So because we're somewhat comparable to trees, we're not supposed to destroy fruit trees, right? It's actually in this case it's read like a question. Ki adam hasada is a tree of a field, like a human that you would draw before you into a besieged city. So is it something you should destroy? No, you're supposed to kill the people. You're at war with the people. Why do you have to bother with the trees? That's one way to read that verse. Okay. But Sefer HaChinuch, remember Sefer HaChinuch was written anonymously, by the way, as following the mitzvot according to the Rambam, the 613 mitzvot that the Rambam said are in the Torah. So the Sefer HaChinuch was written, let's say, about 400 years later, and explaining each one of the mitzvot. So this is one of the last mitzvot that's going to explain, because it's at the end of Devarim, right? So it's Taf Kuf Chaf Tet. So that's 429, 529 out of 613. So we're in the last 100 mitzvot already, okay? 529 of 613. And he, as usual, he quotes the mitzvah. He gives some sources about how it's supposed to be done. But what I really want to focus on is the shoresh. Ironic for a tree, the shoresh is also means the root. So the shoresh of the mitzvah yedua. So the reason for this mitzvah is a given. It's known. It's obvious. Shehu k'dei lamed nafshenu la'ahev hatov v'to'eles v'dabdik bo. Very important phrase. Should be on bumper stickers all over the country. Do you know why we can't destroy a fruit tree? Because we should inculcate within ourselves an appreciation for all things good. We should inculcate within ourselves an appreciation for all things good. La'ahev hatov. It's a fruit tree. It provides things. Don't destroy it, because it's done nothing wrong to you. It's only good. You have nothing to gain by destroying it. It's just a worthless act of violence against the tree, where all you need to do is just leave it alone if you don't want its trees. Okay? You don't want its fruit. The good people in the past are people who love peace, and they're happy with good, with briot, and with the nature, carbon otam the Torah, and they like to bring things close to Torah. They like to connect Torah to their lives, and to the nature, and to everything that's around them. And that's the point of life. That's what it's all about. Like I said, there's a lot more here. Like I said, he gives the source of the mitzvah. He gives now the roots of the mitzvah, and he also gives some exceptions, etc., when it's relevant, how it's relevant, how to do it. I wish I had more time to go over it, but like I said, it's available there. What I really want to just focus your attention on is this idea that we don't destroy fruit trees, not because there's something holy or mystical about them. Very simple. There is something holy about us. And what's holy in us is that we can appreciate good. And if we start destroying things at random, we're going to stop appreciating things. And what kind of life are we living? What's the point? Okay. Okay. There is, last but not least, we're a little bit over time, but we started a little late, so we're going to try to get to this point. There is a mitzvah, and this probably needs a lot more time to explain, but I'm try to say it briefly. There's a very strange mitzvah, actually seems very violent, and it has to do with finding a dead body outside of a city. So you find a dead body outside of a city. You don't know who killed him. It was obviously a murder victim. It's clear there's a knife in his back or whatever, right? So you know the person was murdered, but you don't know by whom. They didn't have any kind of there weren't any videos of to try to find the killer. There was there's no DNA testing. There's no fingerprinting back then. So what did they do? They basically gave up hope of finding the murder victim, and what they did was they traced the corpse to they traced to what was the closest city, and the court of the closest city was then required to do a whole kind of ceremony to expiate their sin of not really taking care of this person well enough to make sure that he'd be safe. Okay, we're not saying they killed him. We're not saying that the rabbis of the town killed this man, obviously, but they're responsible somewhat because that's what leaders are. That's what we started this parsha with, right? The whole idea of having a king is that we're having a leader who's now going to be responsible for our behavior. Channel that into that idea into this. V'ata tiva'er hadam anaki mikir b'chal lama. Sorry, going a little ahead of ourselves. Let's read the verse. First chapter 21, verse 4. V'horidu ziknei ha'ir hahi et ha'egla el hanachar eitan asher lo ya'abed bo v'lo yizarea arpo sham et ha'agala b'nachal. So the elders of the city take this egla, which is a cow, to the river. And there they basically they make sure the cow hasn't ever worked. It's a young cow, and there they basically break this cow's neck. And this is part of the ritual that I was saying before, where they expiate their sin, where they get forgiveness for the sin of not taking care of this person. So now the Talmud has a story in Ketubot. I'm just going to read you the English real quick. The Gemara asks about what was the following verse from the conclusion of the chapter of the heifer. The verse says, "So shall you put away the innocent blood from your midst." That's not even this verse. That's next verse. Next few verses. So it says by doing this whole ceremony, you're going to get rid of the innocent blood from your midst. Appears to be teaching the very same halacha that a murderer must be executed. Why do I need it? The Gemara answers, it is necessary to teach that which is taught in a Braita. From where is it derived that with regard to those executed by the sword, and those murderers, that their execution is administered from the neck and nowhere else? The verse states, "And so shall you put away the innocent blood from your midst," likening all spillers of blood to the beheaded calf through an unresolved murder. In other words, the Talmud makes a comparison. This comparison between a murderer who is killed by the neck. How do you know that the murderer is killed by beheading? It's because which is also involved with murder somehow, is also killed by a beheading action. And therefore the Gemara then asks, if so, just as there in the case of the beheaded calf is beheaded with a cleaver, with a kofitz at the nape of the neck. And it's not like they just like twist the neck. It's not easy to do with a cow anyway. You have to use some sort of a implement to do this. So Rav Nachman said that says Rabbi Bar Ahuva, Avu, that the verse says, and you shall love your neighbor as yourself, from which it is derived, choose for him an agreeable death. It is prohibited to abuse a guilty person with executing him, chopping off his head the way you do with this heifer. In other words, even though we use this principle of this Egla Arufa, of this cow, to teach us the principle of how a murderer is killed, nevertheless, we don't learn everything from that. We don't make a complete parallel. And why? Because we have a special mitzvah of v'ahavta l'reacha kamocha. We have to love our fellow as ourselves. And we wouldn't want to be killed the way a heifer is killed. There has to be a more humane way, as terrible as the murder, as a murderer is, as terrible as a death penalty is. Even the death penalty of a murderer needs to be done somehow humanely. That principle is part of this morality that we're trying to inculcate into the nation. And one of the ways that we're trying to live up to Hashem's standard is to love each other in this kind of way, where we won't be killing a human being the way we would kill an animal. Even though the whole concept of how we kill that person is learned from that animal, that doesn't mean that we treat him like an animal. Even though he's not a great person, he is a murderer, etc., but he'll get his punishment, he'll get his reward, and that's not for us to judge, as we learned in the Rambam class on Monday. So parallels back to that as well. So Baruch Hashem, we're going to stop the class here. We invite everybody to join us next week, next Parsha, and everybody should have a wonderful night. I'm going to stop the recording.